I'm your host, Annie Bowles, and this is News du Jour. Hey everyone, welcome back to the News du Jour, a calmer space to consume the news. So first up today, of course, we have to start off with the midterm elections. So I know a lot of you guys probably went into yesterday's episode expecting to hear about them, but the thing is, we just don't get enough results that night to prepare anything intelligent for you guys for the day after an election. So we really wait to put together the pieces as best we can. That said, a lot of these races are still undecided, as I'm sure many of you know. So what we're going to do is talk about where things stand now, the implications of the wins and losses we do know about, including historical wins and sort of looking to the future. So let's go ahead and dive in with the overall counts for the House and the Senate. So at the time that I'm writing this, the Senate stands at 48 to 48, and this means there are 4 races yet to be decided. Some races, even prominent ones like Walker versus Warnock, will go into runoffs, so it might be a little bit longer before we hear about them. And then over in the House, things currently stand at 187 Democrats to 206 Republicans. So Republicans do have a slight lead, but there are still 50 races yet to be called. So that's a lot of unknown. There's definitely a push these days to be extra cautious in processing election results, so you can expect delays all across the board from now on because they're going to triple check everything and just make sure everything is fair and above board because there's a lot of drama surrounding elections and polling these days. Better safe than sorry though, right? So they'll get us the results when they have them. So the first big implication that we have to talk about to do with this season of elections is the lack of a red wave. So the major thing to note here is that going into these midterms, it was highly anticipated that there would be this big red wave, and meaning a lot more Republicans would get elected in Congress than Democrats, and a lot of seats would be flipped. And the reason they believed this is kind of twofold. First off, just historical precedent. So typically, whatever party is in the White House, the midterms will then flip-flop the other direction. That is just very normal to see. And the second part of it is that Biden is not doing well in his polls. He is under 40%. So that is, or he's right at 40% probably. But either way, any president under 50%, you definitely are going to see a lot of pushback in the midterm. So everyone was expecting this huge red wave. But the thing is, it didn't happen. And this is yet another example of also polls getting it wrong. A lot of the polls showed that there was going to be this huge red wave, which is why it is important never to put too much stock into what the polls say. But yeah, there was supposed to be this overwhelming overthrow of Democrats in the House that just hasn't happened. It may even come down to a single digit difference in the House, and certainly will in the Senate. Things will stay very neck and neck in Congress, and that bodes well for the Biden administration as they are looking to tick things off their to-do list before the 2024 elections. Now, we did have some historical wins from the past few days, so let's go over those. First up, Maura Healey becomes the nation's first openly lesbian governor ever as governor of Massachusetts. Next, Wes Moore becomes Maryland's first Black governor. So super exciting on both of those fronts. Florida also had a kind of historical moment. I'm putting it in this category because they are really turning the tide into becoming a red state. So Florida was historically a toss-up, really heated state that really could have gone either way. And it has a ton of electoral votes. And so it was always a battleground state. And it's no longer looking like a swing state. It's not operating like a swing state. It's becoming more and more red. And the reason that, or some of the implications here, are that Governor Ron DeSantis is doing a really effective job in Florida. And the Republican Party is going to look at that and say, look what he can do versus what Trump can do, which is cause a lot of problems as of right now. So it may be something that helps propel Governor Ron DeSantis into the 2024 presidential election. So it's just something to note and definitely could be a historical timepiece. We also saw pot legalized in 2 states over the last election. So voters in both Maryland and Missouri also voted this week to legalize marijuana for recreational use, not just medical. And that's a really huge distinction. This is signaling that there could be a national push, even in more conservative areas, towards full legalization of marijuana, making it much less of a partisan issue. So that's kind of our quick recap as things like get down to those last few races, those last few seats. We will keep you guys posted on those races and kind of zoom in a little bit on those and let you know what's what. But I just wanted to give you a general overview for today's episode. And then, of course, we have to segue into the Meta layoffs. So as we know, Twitter just laid off a ton of people and it made huge headlines. But now Meta, the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, has been going through significant financial losses as well and have had to make some layoffs themselves. They saw a 50% drop in quarterly profits. Their stock dropped 70% this year. The company's leader, Mark Zuckerberg, claims that the company tried to grow too fast when they saw a spike over the pandemic in ad spending, thinking that the spike would be there to stay. But there's a lot that actually went into this dire situation. A global economic turndown slowed businesses all over the world, and that slowed spending on ads. They also spent a lot on the digital world that Zuckerberg calls the metaverse. They also spent a lot on hiring. And in addition to all of this, with the changes from Apple, I don't know if you guys have gotten that question on your phone. Do you want to allow this app to track you? That really put a dent in the specifics of the targeting that Facebook could do with their ads. And reportedly, that caused a dip in ad revenue as well. But with the company losing billions, Zuckerberg was left with no choice but to make cuts somewhere. Meta laid off about 11,000 employees, far more than Twitter just did, and that amounts to 13% of Meta's staff being let go. Last month, Meta released documentation that Reality Labs, aka the Metaverse, actually had $3.67 billion in losses. Can you imagine? With all that's going on in the world, hunger, the climate crisis, a full-on war, that someone spent over $3.5 billion on a fake reality when funds are so badly needed in this one? Now, maybe one day we'll look back and see that Zuckerberg was a visionary and that his risk really paid off, that maybe he invented the next internet. But maybe he is that much of a visionary and maybe he's not. He's piling a lot of eggs into this one basket of the metaverse and kind of risking what he has built thus far to try to step into the future. And again, maybe it'll pay off. Only time will tell. But tech across the board is really suffering right now, you guys, which does not bode well for the economy here in the US, which has been propped up by tech in recent years. And now with TikTok on the rise, a Chinese company, yet another segment of the economy is being sent overseas. So that's mostly it for today. But before we go, I wanted to let you guys know that Kherson, a very key city, has now been abandoned by Russia. As of yesterday, Russia's defense minister made an announcement on this front. We'll dive into it tomorrow more, but this is just an incredible, development for Ukraine. So we'll keep you guys posted. And that is the news du jour. Today, I wanted to leave you guys with the quote, "Be still, listen to the silence, and let your soul catch up." If you enjoyed this episode, please consider becoming a patron of our podcast. For $7.99 a month, you can unlock tons of perks like breaking news text messages so that you're never out of the loop. Tons of bonus episodes are already up there ready for you to binge, and a discussion board full of networking opportunities and much more. Go to www.patreon.com/sugarfree media today to become a patron. This is the best way to support our show. Our patrons make News du Jour possible. But a couple other ways to support our podcast are rate and review on whatever podcast platform you use to listen, share on your social media, you have influence, tell your friends, family, and colleagues that you love News du Jour and why you listen. You can also follow us on social media under sugarfreemedia.co on Instagram, just Sugarfree Media, all one word, on TikTok, and sugarfree_media on Twitter. We also have a weekend newsletter called Dreamers Digest that's full of dreamy content recommendations for your weekend and a life update from yours truly. Sign up today on our website, www.sugarfreemedia.co. Our music is by Joey Lavoie and Nicholas Foster. Our cover art is by Hannah Pierce Photography. Our Sugar Free Media logo is by Catherine Jezek Designs. Any twinkling or little footsteps you might hear in the background are by my dog, Rhett. He's a rescue pup and always records with me. We appreciate you listening and look forward to telling you about the news again next time on News du Jour. Broadcasting from Oklahoma.